Welcome back to Self Love Ignited. Today on the podcast, I am joined by Diana Gremillion, and we have the best conversation. Literally gives me goosebumps. Diana has advised billion-dollar deals for Fortune 500 companies and cooked Michelin-starred meals for former US President Obama. But when burnout forced her to give up her life as a chef, Diana transformed her health crisis into a new life adventure. She tells us all about her beautiful blossoming of life, how that is linked to how she learned to love herself and accept herself. She wrapped herself in love. Diana now works as a speaker, author, coach, and healer. She's living her dream life in Hawaii. She's passionate about helping business owners manifest their dream life and business in months, not decades. Diana is a fabulous human being. I cannot wait for you to meet her. Jump on in. My name is Katie Allen, and this is Self Love Ignited. Let's get to it. Welcome back to Self Love Ignited. Today on the podcast, I am interviewing Diana Gremillion. Hopefully I said your name right, Diana. I'm really excited to have you here. And hear a little bit more about you and your story. So why don't we just start, why don't you introduce yourself to everybody?
Hey, Katie, it's great to see you. It's great to be here with you on the Self Love Ignited podcast. As you said, yeah, you totally nailed my name, Diana Gremillion. I am the author of Manifest Your Dreams. I'm an international speaker, a coach, and a healer. And before I did any of that stuff, I used to work as an investment banker on Wall Street, and I even worked as a chef and got a chance to cook for former President of the US, President Obama. So I've had a very different life and in a lot of different ways, but self-love was such a big part of the journey of my journey and transformation, and I'm excited to share.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that, like, you have lived so many lives in your one lifetime so far. I'm like, there's so much to go still. Like, who knows where you're going to end up or what you're going to do, right? It's awesome.
Yeah, it's sometimes I look at it, I'm like, wow, this is crazy what I've been able to accomplish and achieve since I started to implement more self-love into my life.
Yeah.
A lot of what I'd done before was quite remarkable, but at the same time, when I started to see the power of self-love, the way that my life changed was so it was so drastic and so powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. That's amazing. That's amazing. So let's rewind then and go back to the beginning, right? So this podcast is really to tell the stories of women just like you who have come from a place of not liking themselves, not loving themselves, having low self-worth, whatever that happens to be for you, and sort of the journey from there towards or into self-love. So Diana, tell us, where did your challenges with yourself begin?
You know, from the time that I was a kid, I felt like there was something wrong with me and my body and my skin. Uh, I'm Filipina. I'm brown. I have black hair. Look like an Asian woman. And growing up in a predominantly Jewish white neighborhood, I stuck out like a sore thumb. I didn't look like anybody. And I remember, when I was just in kindergarten, we had like one of those like kindergarten yearbooks, right?
Yeah.
And it was like photos that we were drawing of ourselves or like whatever. And I drew myself as a blonde white woman. And I think that that's really telling that I was 5 and I was drawing myself that way, because I think something that we don't always see is that there can be these societal cues or subconscious kind of things that we see in the world that tell us that our body is wrong, or that something about us is not right. And I had internalized that in a way where in the way that I wanted to commemorate myself in kindergarten, I wanted to commemorate myself as a blonde woman. Um, so there were things like that. I think societally, um, growing up with Asian parents, there is a little bit of reality to that idea of like the Asian F being like anything below an A. And in my family, it was anything below 100. So a 98 was deficient, a 97 was deficient, 95 was deficient. What's wrong? Why did you miss the 5%? And in many ways, this drove me to high levels of success. So this constant focus on what was not 100%, the 5% that was missing, helped me close that gap a lot of times.
Mhm.
It drove me. It was a focus, but what I didn't realize was that focusing on what was missing made me feel like something was always missing, no matter how whole I was. Um, so yes, this drove me to a high level of success in investment banking on Wall Street, even in high power kitchens, whether it was on, Michelin-starred places, James Beard Award winning places, even going to the place where when I worked as a chef, for a famous restaurateur out in New York, like being promoted twice in 6 months, like I knew how to hate myself to a certain level of success, to see the problems, to see what was wrong, and fix it. And I thought that this was good because I was very problem oriented, but all about solving the problem. But because my focus was always on the problems, it was like the problems were never going away.
Mhm.
And it was like I was constantly dissatisfied, even solving all these different and challenging problems.
Yeah.
And it got to a place, like these techniques of judgment, like looking at what was missing, all that kind of stuff worked really well in some areas, like career. I really was able to do a lot, but at the same time, I was really struggling inside my own body. I I felt like I was, like constantly at battle with my body. I struggled with my weight pretty much my whole life. My body was never good enough. This part, that part, whatever. For me, it happened to be like I hated my thighs, my stomach, my arms, like, and I mean, I even mentioned, right, in subconscious ways, I hated my skin and what I looked like.
Mhm.
And I was at constant battle with my body. It was never good enough. And I went into those places of punishment and deprivation. And so for me, what a lot of that looked like was extreme patterns of over exercise, extreme diets, and then getting to a place where like I would just give up and, like eat everything kind of thing. Um, and so that affected my health, but also all the stress of constantly pushing, driving, striving, wanting to be the best, put a lot of stress on me. I mean, even working in New York, working as a chef, high stress stuff. And then I put extra stress on myself, like nobody had to, there was no reason I had to get promoted so fast. There was no reason I needed to say yes to all the projects, and I did.
Right.
So I don't know, maybe you can relate to saying yes to something just because somebody challenges you and asks you if you can do it. And it's not even necessarily something that's right or for you, but you're like, yeah, like you say yes just because the opportunity is there.
Mhm.
And I was doing a whole lot of that. I was saying yes, and not really thinking about what was right for me. But um, at the time that I was working for this restaurant group where I got promoted twice in 6 months, they asked me to open 9 different restaurants in 2 different states, all on the same day. And I mean, you heard me.
That's
I'm up for
crazy.
a challenge.
Whoa.
So I said yes. Right. And when it comes to success that's scalable and in a restaurant, one of the things that's really interesting is that it's really about consistency. It's really about consistent product, regardless of some of the variables that are going in. Like you don't always have the staff that you want, or maybe you don't have like quite as much of um, I don't know, cilantro as you want. Um, and it's like, how do we create something that maintains consistency and for the guest, is a great experience consistently, even when we don't have consistency in terms of like what's going on behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And so that was how I developed and create systems, is like really looking at things and being like, well, how do we create something? How do we create a standard operating procedure that works in the case where we have our best cook on the station, and it works if we have to pull the dishwasher out of the dish pit because we're short staffed, kind of thing. And those are real realities of restaurants. So anytime I build systems, it's always with reality in mind. And so I was building these systems for these restaurants. A lot of that is to be able to open 9 things at once, is a lot of like kind of like leveraging a system in different places in different ways. So I'm putting all these different things in place, getting a training team in place, worrying about the hiring, making sure that the kitchens are set up, all that kind of stuff. And leading up to it, as I was getting prepared, there were a whole lot of, things that were going on personally in terms of my health. So, I was breaking out in hives, but I could cover that up in a chef's coat. Nobody could tell. So, it was easy to keep going. I was developing bone spurs and pain in my feet, but I could wear custom orthotics and, be fine. And there were even days where the back pain was so much that like I literally couldn't even walk to the bathroom. But we changed our bed, and we got a better bed so that I could sleep and it wasn't so painful. Um, and so I kept going. I kept pushing through and finding ways to solve my problems. Um, and then on opening day, I was in a hotel room in Washington, D.C. And as I got up, I looked at the pillow and saw like a lot of hair on the pillow. And I was like, this is weird. Like, what's going on? I didn't really think much about it. I had 9 restaurants to open. So I walked over to the mirror and noticed that I had a huge bald spot about the size of a quarter on the right side of my head. But I had 9 restaurants to open. I didn't have time to think about myself or what was going on in my body. And how many of you listening have ever felt like, oh no, this thing that's going on with me, I need to ignore it because I have something else. There are people who are counting on me. There's other things going on. I'm going to brush this to the side, because that's what I did with my hair. I just brushed it to the side, just covered it up so that nobody could see what was going on inside. And I went and I opened those restaurants. And, in the middle of all that, I didn't have time, or didn't feel like I had time to think about myself. And it wasn't until 2 weeks later when I got home that I could really, in my own bathroom, in my own mirror, behind those closed doors, I could wash that brave face off. I could stop pretending that I was okay, and I could really look at myself. But Katie, I didn't want to.
Yeah.
I didn't want to look at myself. I didn't want to face what was going on. I didn't want to face that I wasn't in love with cooking anymore, that I'd burned out, that I wasn't happy, that I was frustrated. And, I knew that the hair stuff was caused by stress. And so I blamed, living in a stressful city. I blamed having a stressful job. I blamed, the teams that didn't support me, the managers who weren't there for me, everybody, everything. And as I thought about all that pain, I remember thinking, "Oh, I'm not going to let this be my life anymore." I was so angry. I didn't want any of this. And I said, this is it. I'm going to change my life. I'm going to break through all of these problems I've never been able to overcome. Like I want to break through all of it. I want to stop struggling with my weight. I want to break through these health issues. I want to start my own business. I want to break out of my introverted shell. Everything that had held me back in a way up until then. I was like, I want to get through this. Later that night, my husband came home, and that was the first time that I showed him what was going on with my hair and the bald spot. And when he saw it, he just hugged me and held me and told me, okay, it's time for us to move to Hawaii. That had always been our dream. That had always been what we'd wanted. And I looked at him and I said, yeah. And I told him about my dream of, breaking through my weight issues, of starting my own business, like all these different things. And he was on board. He's like, all right, yeah, let's do that. But he paused for a minute and he was like, but Diana, what's different this time? And I was like, well, what do you mean what's different? Like, I just told you, we'll move to Hawaii, I'll start my new business, like all these different things. Like, what do you mean what's different? And he was like, well, you've done this before. We've moved before. You've changed jobs before, and you're still in this place where you're stressed out and unhappy. So what's gonna change?
Mhm.
And Katie, I have to tell you, I wanted to smack him.
I
I
bet
wanted
you
to
did.
smack him.
I bet you did.
I was like, how dare you? You know, like I was so angry.
Yeah.
But in honesty, he was right.
Yeah.
I just didn't want to face it. You know, like it wasn't just about changing the window dressing and what was going on outside, because the common denominator in all my problems was me.
Yeah.
I was the common thread in all of them. And as much as I did, as much as it was caused by the stress, as much as I wasn't supported, it also had to do with something that was going on inside me. And until I took ownership of that, I would just be creating the same reality in Hawaii, in my new business, and wherever I went.
Yeah.
And so I realized I needed help because however I was doing it wasn't working anymore. And so I reached out, I got coaching, I worked with healers who helped me see um, some of the kind of subconscious trauma I had experienced, and some of the blocks that I'd have. You know, I'm a 9/11 survivor. I have like other things that I didn't even really see for myself that were holding me back. And
Mhm.
even just with self-love, like I joke sometimes, you know, like back in 2017, I couldn't even love a Facebook post. That was like too intense for me to press the heart button on Facebook. I was like,
Wow.
this is like too much love.
Yeah.
Um, and like like over time though, I realized that there was something about love that I had to start doing. So I would like sometimes press that Facebook button for love. And
Mhm.
I was like, okay, you know, and like it was very uncomfortable because love was not really part of the way that I grew up. Like it wasn't a word I really used. Um, but I saw that it was something that like, you know, even the exercise of looking into my own eyes in the mirror and saying I love you was incredibly hard at first. But I could see, and as I'd said it, I could see how much like my own personal being and psyche was changing as I thought more about, instead of the problems in my life, about what the solution I would love would be. Um, as I started to apply more love, like affirmations and like self care to myself, like, you know, it was really important with all the health issues that were going on. Like, there was a need to kind of rebuild my relationship with my body and my health. And so that was mirror work, that was, you know, affirmations, like spending time with every part of my body to say I love you and to thank my body. And you know, I didn't expect how fast my results would transform. I didn't expect how quickly I could make this shift where before exercise felt like punishment. And then all of a sudden, as I'm doing more self love work, exercise began to feel like love for
Mhm.
myself. Exercise began to feel like um, not like a punishment. It didn't feel like punishment to eat healthy. It felt like I'm nourishing my body. It completely changed the same actions that I was taking before for my health, completely changed with love,
Yeah.
because now instead of feeling like I'm being deprived because I'm not eating a pizza, I'm thinking about when I'm going to have the most amazing pizza. And I'm thinking about enjoying my and nourishing myself right now, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Um, and it made for a completely different relationship with my health in terms of weight loss, with my health in terms of chronic illness and pain. I mean, when Brian and I moved here to Hawaii, part of the reason, you know, I had as many diseases as a 60-year-old woman, and I was in my early 30s.
Wow.
And I realized, you know, like something about that was wrong. So with self-love, with transforming my relationship with my body and my health, I was able to take better care of myself with weight loss. A lot of the issues and my stress started to fade, where many of those issues don't plague me anymore. And not only that, again, I thought that this was all like for my health, right? And like all these different things. And I saw how it actually changed my results in business and in life, where I started to see I didn't have to keep punishing myself and working myself to the bone to be successful, that I could achieve success with a greater quality of life and doing more of what I love. So, yeah, I mean, self love for me was the difference between a to do list and a to be list. So, what I mean by that is that so when we take action towards our goals, right? When we're just taking action towards our goals, like that action definitely will lead us to our goal. But that action might not be sustainable if we don't have the being part of our goal or what it is that we want also kind of figured out.
Yeah.
So, like for example, with dieting, if we're just restricting calories, if we're not eating, if we're limiting and trying to eat a very healthy diet, but at the same time, if our beingness, if our feeling is that we're depriving ourselves, that this is punishment, that this doesn't feel good, that this is just a 90-day cleanse that I need to get through.
Hmm.
When we have those sort of feelings, even when we're taking the action is not sustainable
Yeah.
because it's coming from a place of punishment deprivation. And eventually, willpower is not going to last. Self control is not going to last. Shame and judgment is not going to last. Like, if shame and judgment and all these things worked, wouldn't all of us never have any trouble with diets and exercise or any of these things? Like,
Yeah.
it's about something deeper. So when we pair our to do list, the things that we want to do to achieve a goal, with a being that is embracing and embodies more love, the results that we take as we do become all the more sustainable. So, this is true in health, in business, in relationships, in any of those things, right? Like if we go on a weekly date night with our husband and we just are going on a weekly date night because we heard that it's good for our marriage to go on a weekly date night,
Hmm.
that's one thing. But if we're going on that weekly night and we're infusing it with love, and we're thinking about investing this time in a special relationship and all those different things, that time, that action has so much more power and is also something we naturally want to repeat again.
Yeah.
It's not a boring something that we have to do, but it's something that is enriching us. And so when we add love into the actions that we take, it is truly, truly transformative.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Your story is amazing, Diana. I just want to say you have come such a long way. And you have been through so much. Like you said, you were in your early 30s when you had that really like that. Your health was breaking down, your career was ending, you were making this move. Like that's so much to happen. And yet you are so resilient. And like your energy about all of this is just beautiful. And I mean, I think a lot of people could very easily look at that, look at having a breakdown, look at having deteriorating health, and just be like, well, I guess this is it. Or I guess I just keep doing this until, I'm in a wheelchair or until I actually can't. And and it sounds like thanks to your husband as well, who sounds like he's kind of a great guy. You were willing to do the hard stuff and the stuff that most people are not willing to do. Actually take a step back, actually look at yourself for real. What is different? What's going to be different? What do I want to be different? And I've never heard anybody say a to-do list and a to-be list, but I'm 100% stealing that. I love that. Like I talk about being a lot, right? Like it's who you are being, but having that like to-be list, like really, because you're right, when you do that, when that's your priority, it infuses into everything that you do, like without fail, every single thing in your life. Yeah. Yeah. How can I ask you, how has this sort of you stepping into like a loving way of being and having this be like this center that radiates out, how has this impacted the relationships in your life? So like your marriage, your friendships, those with your family, like what's different now?
So when you apply love to self, one of the most amazing things I find is that it literally emanates out of you in every other relationship that you have, because Now you as now one of the pieces of the relationship includes and embodies more love. So by nature, your other relationships shift. By nature, I mean, this happened in my marriage where we had a great marriage, but like it was more the kind of life of like default date nights instead of like really having that infused intentional time. And that's what being really um, is setting a powerful intention. So when we set the intention of this is time for us in our relationship, um, this is time for love, this is time um, for us to really grow and nurture and come together stronger, that shows up in our marriage. Um, my self-love relationship changed my relationship with my mom. Um, we had a contentious relationship for most of my life where I felt bitter, I felt angry, um, and instead I started to see the ways that she and I were similar when I applied love. Um, and it helped me kind of come to and find common ground with her that makes it so that we can go on vacations together and have a great time. um I've even, my dad wasn't really big on the word. He didn't grow up using that. That wasn't parenting that was modeled to my parents, and so they didn't parent in that way.
Mhm.
um and my own relationship shifting with love and with all that actually led to 2 years ago, like my dad, I remember saying I love you to me like for one of the very first times on the phone, and it was just, it was not ever what I expected. I
Mhm.
never thought that that would happen.
Yeah.
um and I think that that's part of the power of love, is it's like literally as you embody more love, as you're sending it out because you yourself are infusing yourself with it, other people feel it and they return it to you. So it's as if by feeding ourselves that love, that there's more that we find. But I want to talk to you about, life is not full of amazing sunshine and bright rainbow moments all the time. Where
Yep.
does a rainbow come from if not from rain?
Yeah.
And the way that I think about this as a chef, um, is that sometimes in life, in whatever we're doing, sometimes we have rotten ingredients, right? So, like on Top Chef, if you've ever watched one of those shows or like a cooking competition show, sometimes, that one of the challenges that they get is to work with ingredients that are like not prime,
Yep.
right? Because the thing is, when you have prime ingredients, when everything is perfect, when your conditions are perfect, it's easier to make
Totally.
something that's great.
Yeah.
It's easier. It's a lot harder when you've been dealt something that looks rotten, something that feels bitter, something that's sour, like all these different things. And whether we're talking about life or food, sometimes we have ingredients that are not ideal. And what I find is that the chefs in the cooking competition who succeed, who are the ones who make it at the very end, the way that they show their skill is the ability to work with these rotten ingredients. And so we all have the ability to work with these rotting ingredients. And when we understand that rotting is a part of the process, that sometimes there is something that's sour in there, sometimes there is something that's bitter. What chefs do when they have these ingredients that are not prime, perhaps, is they look for what flavor, what good can we extract from this? Maybe they turn it into a puree, maybe they pull out the sweetness, or they balance this bitter aspect with some fat, or they use the acid, the sourness, to give things a brightness and acidity.
Mhm.
So it's really about maybe not having all the ingredients or the conditions that we want. It's really about pulling out the very best out of what we have and making do with what we have. And even if we were to look at some of our very favorite foods in the whole world, with whether we're talking about wine, charcuterie, chocolate, all of these foods are actually things that have gone through, even, did I mention cheese? These are all foods that have gone through a rotting process.
Mhm.
They've gone through a fermentation or a transformation process. And at first, when you're inexperienced, milk that's aging is going bad. it's rotting, it's souring, it becomes something that's not desirable. But if we know how to pull out the best from that ingredient, if we know how to work with that ingredient, we know how to add the right things in to transform it into something else, then we create something then we create something magical, something that has so much more flavor than just plain milk.
Yeah.
We have cheese, we have something with richness, we have something with nuance, we have something that's completely unique and that seems nothing like the original ingredient. So this is what we can do in life when we have rotting ingredients. It's not about the rotting ingredient that we can just, many of us just allow to continue to rot or fester or just, do nothing with. We just throw it in the trash. We don't have to do that. What we can do instead is look to extract the very best out of that experience. And if we're talking in life, right, this could be lessons, this could be finding purpose through it, right? So if I were to look at 9/11, one of the lessons that really taught me was to not follow what everybody else's plan for me is, because nobody really knows, and that my life could go at any minute, and I don't want to live somebody else's plan.
Mhm.
I want to live my life. That 9/11 taught me that. So as painful as it was to experience that, as traumatic as that was, like that is the good that I weave into my life dish, as a result of what I've gone through. Losing my job in a global financial crisis. Some people talk about losing their job however many years ago, and it's a pivotal moment where that's why their whole life now looks like this.
Yeah.
And that's true for me too. Losing my job in that crisis meant that I had the chance to follow my passion, become a chef, do something that I really loved. So I turned it around, made lemons out of lemonade, or
Mhm.
sorry, lemonade out of lemons.
Yeah.
Um, and even with my health this time, right? Pulling out the lesson, pulling out what it was that I wanted to grow, finding a purpose, knowing that because I lost my dream, following my passion, working hard and stressing myself, I don't want other people to go through that. I don't want other people to be living a nightmare if they're willing to work hard and to follow their dreams. How can I help them not burn out, not lose their passion and stay on the course and achieve what it is they really want? So me failing at one of my original dreams helps me help other people make more dreams come true. So whatever rotten ingredients we have in life, whatever seems bitter, whatever seems sour, use it to create nuance. Use it to create depth in your life. Allow it not to flavor and garnish the whole dish, but allow it to allow it to create something that gives it that little nuance, that bitterness, that depth, that people don't know why it is that that food tastes so delicious, but it really is because you've made this full flavor experience that somebody couldn't have if they didn't have a little bit of that darkness or contrast.
Right. Right. That is absolutely beautiful. I love the analogy with food and with life because it's absolutely true. And it does not at all surprise me that you became a chef because your passion for food and ingredients is very obvious. And I love that you can sort of pull that into your life now, right? And all the lessons and everything. So, Diana, tell us about your business now because you were an investment banker that stopped. You were a chef who was doing amazing things. Then you realized that it was time for the next step. You had all these breakthroughs within yourself. You started to regain your health. And with that, I know came you became an entrepreneur and you started your own business. So tell us about how that began and then what that looks like today. What is the work that you do now?
Absolutely. So I have always wanted my own business. Since I was a little girl, I was at enterprising, wheeling, dealing, looking for opportunities to make money kind of kid.
Yeah.
And I'm a math nerd, so I love math. Business felt like a natural fit for me. Even remember writing in my business school essay about how I wanted to start this company that changed the way that the world would learn and be educated and all these different things. And then, of course, I graduated and became an investment banker and worked for other people and did
Yep.
all these different things. And because part of it was that I'm super introverted and it was scary to start my own business. Everything about that was hard for me. I was so much better at behind the scenes and the operations, making sure that things were running smoothly in the background and not as much really wanting to interact with people. But going through the burnout, all these different things, as I was working with a coach, um, and telling her about my dream and starting my own business and all these different things. I thought I was going to become a culinary consultant because it made sense with my background.
Mhm.
She was like, "Well, have you ever considered becoming a coach, Diana?" And I told her the truth at the time for me, which was, no, that's a fake job. No, I'm a chef. Like, that is like not real work,
Yeah.
like, like whatever. And really rude to say to a coach. But I wanted to be honest, and I want to be honest about that was my experience. That was my feeling about coaching before.
Mhm.
But she was a great coach, and that meant that she took my words and was like, "Well, why don't you just find out a little bit more about it?" Keeping me open, right? And in that, I chose to listen, to learn a little bit. And as I learned a little bit more about coaching, I realized, wow, this isn't a fake job. This is actually my dream job. I get to make an impact in a way that's really, really meaningful for people. And so throughout the pandemic, I did a lot of coaching and I helped a lot of people. I also am certified in energy psychology healing. So through crisis and through difficult times, I've helped many business owners to transform their results, to pivot, to find, to take what looked like trash and find treasure in the midst of it and really build upon that to create a life that they absolutely love. When I did this all through the pandemic and got to a point about earlier this year, I was just burned out. I was tired of coaching 16, 20 clients at a time, and feeling just like completely drained and exhausted. And I realized that um, as much as I did enjoy the coaching aspect, that it wasn't really even fully what it was that I wanted. For me, quality of life, after so many years of working hard and burning out and all of that, has become something that I value on a whole new level. And I saw myself basically just repeating the patterns of working hard and burning out and coaching. And when I thought about it too, part of that wasn't ideal to me was that I'm not a natural nurturer. But as shy as I am and as introverted as I am, I happen to just naturally have a lot of really great stories and a great ability to speak.
Mhm.
I've honed it as well, but like it was something that naturally came to me. And I realized, what I really want to do is make an impact through more speaking to groups, to different people, sharing my stories, and spending less time coaching in the way that I had been taught in the typical coaching model. And so I redesigned myself and my business. I didn't want to move into burnout and feel disillusioned and lose another career. So I said, okay, instead, I need to build this in a way that feels sustainable and great for me. So now what I do is a whole lot of speaking, networking. That is a bulk of like my time is sharing value and sharing messages and teaching,
Mhm.
and then a little bit of coaching as well, but mostly just in an hour on one day every single week I coach, and
Yeah.
it's all largely in group. So that's how I've kind of shifted my life and my business. And Katie, it's been amazing. Like I wake up not with anxiety, but excited to start the day. I wake up feeling just so grounded, knowing that like this business was a dream. And again, being an introverted, shy person, like the energy psychology, that healing work really helps me to calm the nerves, to channel my energy so that it comes through in a way where there's power without the nervousness that I inherently felt before.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's a lot of what my business looks like now. I have a journal that I use that helps people. So in my years of coaching, I was able to come up with a system, 4 different steps that people can take 15 minutes a day to manifest their dreams with more ease. And so that's part of the system that I teach. I show people, because I'm a big believer that, we don't always have ideal conditions. We don't always have 4 hours to spend on our morning routine. So
Yeah.
when we have very limited resources, how do we create systems, just like I talked about when we were talking about the restaurants? How do we create systems that work in the best of times, in the best case scenario, and then in the worst case scenario? And that's what I find that this journal does, is it helps us stay on course and manifest our dreams, whether things are looking good and we have great things we can create with, or whether we're feeling it down in the dumps and needs to turn trash into treasure.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that you I love that you didn't repeat, like, I love that you learned the lesson. And what I mean by that is that you've done the burnout thing. You've done the work hard, the burnout, the work hard, the burnout. And when you started approaching that within your, even though coaching is wonderful, like I'm a coach and like I love it and I totally get it, but it is asking a lot sometimes. And you saw that you were approaching that, and instead of just pushing through, you went, oh wait it, like hold on, like let's just pause here. And you told earlier in your story, you were saying about how when you were sort of realizing that you needed to leave the restaurants, and you were having that conversation with your husband about like, maybe we should move to Hawaii, maybe it's time. And he said, what's different this time? And he asked you that question, and you did the work that it takes, so that the thing that's different is that you don't repeat the same mistakes, right? Like, it's such a different way of approaching life, such a different way. And yeah, now you've created this business that inevitably, I'm sure, will continue to evolve as you do. It will change and it will grow and it will flex and it will bend. But as long as you are doing it so that you are, number one, serving your clients, but number two, serving yourself, that's all that really matters, right?
And I feel that in breaking through a lot of those barriers, yes, energy psychology helped, but really like wrapping yourself in love helps the whole transformation also happen with more ease. Because instead of you feeling unsafe, instead of you feeling out on a limb, when you're giving yourself self love, it's as if you're giving yourself that chrysalis, or which is part of the caterpillar to the butterfly transformation, that safe space in which the caterpillar feels like goo inside,
Yeah.
that has a protective outer covering that is keeping that transformation safe.
Yeah.
Because I do believe that transformation needs to feel safe for us.
Yes. Yes. It does, because there is risk in transformation, right? There's inherent risk in doing things
Yes.
differently than you have in the past, or in being a different way than you have in the past. So yes, when you do sort of embody love, it is that protection. It is the thing that, yeah, it makes everything okay. It keeps you safe. Diana, I have absolutely loved this. I loved your story. I knew a little bit before we started recording today, but I am so grateful for you coming on and sharing yourself and your story. And there has been so many goodies as you've been speaking, so many like golden nuggets. Um, and so anybody who's listening, if you want to get in touch with Diana, find her, find out more about this beautiful journal that she has, all the links and everything, of course, will be in the show notes to do that. So Diana, I just want to ask you, is there anything else that you want to add before we wrap up? Is there any other little bits of wisdom or advice or anything that you would like to maybe recommend to somebody who is maybe where you used to be?
Yes. Um, I think that sometimes self love feels impossible, but that one of the things we want to remember is that we've spent 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, however many years hating ourselves if we weren't consciously loving ourselves. And so it's okay for us to feel like we're taking steps back. It's okay for us to feel like it's hard, because we have 70, 60, however many years, decades of programming that we are dismantling. And that journey can be hard, but that when we do this work, it doesn't just affect us, it affects future generations, it affects past relationships. It literally flows through everything we do. And so, as hard and uncomfortable as the work can be sometimes, that discomfort and challenge is really the bones of transformation. So keep going, even if it's hard.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. I couldn't agree more. And I feel like we're going to leave it there because that is absolute perfection. Absolute perfection. So Diana, I really just want to thank you. Thank you for being here. I'm so grateful for you. I'm so grateful that we met and that you agreed to come on and share yourself with my audience. And you're awesome. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you so much, Katie.
All of the links mentioned during the episode are down in the show notes. Please make sure to go on over and check them out. Also, please remember to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform, and I would be forever grateful if you would go on over and leave us a review on iTunes as well. That's going to help this message reach more women. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Here is to you loving yourself.